Joe, once upon a time when you were a lot younger, you were pretty heavy in credit card debt, right? And you just were in kind of a bad financial position.
First of all, I'm incredibly young still
Ah.
today, Paula. Number two is when you said when you were incredibly heavy, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, easy. But yes, I was horrible with money. I was rotten with money. I had ruined my credit, tons of credit card debt, nowhere to turn.
So during that time, were you ever afraid to ask for help? Like, did you kind of want to just follow the ostrich, bury your head in the sand?
Well, there's a big lie that I actually talk about a lot now, Paula, which is the lie that we are these islands, and I got myself into it. I should be able to get myself out of it, which truly the brain that got you into it shouldn't be trusted to be the same brain that got you that gets you out of it.
Mm. So then how did you hit that inflection point where you actually asked for help?
I was driving home from
Hmm.
a meeting across town, and I was in this rusted out minivan because my credit was so bad I couldn't get a new one. Literally, a friend Paula told me, he's like, "Oh, I know, going to buy a new car isn't a great deal, but new car dealers have all these creative financing things. They totally give credit to anybody." Like, I came clean with one friend of mine and go, "I'm screwed and I need a new car." So I walk into this car dealer, and I know this is a
Hmm.
longer answer than you want, but
Yeah.
I walk into this car dealer, and and I came clean with him. I go, "Hey, my friend recommended you. He said you got all kinds of creative financing. I have amazingly bad credit." And he goes, "Oh, I got you. I got you. Give me your social security number." Walks into his office. He's there forever. He comes back out, and all he says, Paula, is, "Dude,
Oh,
you have
wow.
horrible credit." So I'm in this rusted out minivan because I can't get a new one. I run out of gas on this road in the middle of nowhere. And
Mm.
I have to search through the seats, and I find 85 cents in the seats in the floor of this old minivan. And I have to walk. This sounds like a really old guy story. I have to walk a mile to this mobile station where the dude at the station doesn't want to loan me that plastic gas can because he thinks I'm going to steal it. And
Oh,
that
man.
was the day. This study I like to quote a lot says that over half of us say we've cried about our money. That's the day I cried because I
Mm.
realized I was screwed. I had no credit. I had no money. I had nowhere to turn. I'm way away from home. I have this family that relies on me because I've got young kids, a spouse who's still in school, and not earning any money. And man, I cried my brains out. But that was also the time when I'm like, you know what? You're in control, and you can begin to turn this around. And what I had to do was surround myself with better people. And then I had to quit living. So number one, I had to get rid of the lie that the same brain that got me into it could get me out of it. The
Mm.
second thing I had to do was dispel the second myth, which is that if I just earn a little more money, things will get better. That is
Mm.
such a lie. If I earn $100,000 when I had bad money management skills, I would have spent 120. If I made 120, I would have spent 150. 150, I would have spent, you know what I mean? It didn't matter
Hmm.
how much money I made. I had crappy money skills. And because of that, I was never going to turn it around.
Wow. I mean, what you just described sounds stressful enough, even as a single person. You had young twins.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
old were they at the time?
Yeah. Year and a half old.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Cheryl was still in school. And by the way, and that was the thing too. I didn't want to scare her because I was making all the money. So while I wasn't hiding things from my spouse, and I've never done that except on one pretty hilarious occasion that we can talk about some other day,
Uh-huh.
because it was actually pretty damn funny. But
That'll be the next episode.
yeah, and it was also non-consequential, by the way. I didn't
Mm.
I didn't I didn't hide it from her in a consequential. It was
Okay.
totally
Yeah.
non-consequential. But
Next episode. Next
yes,
episode. Yeah.
but I also wasn't truthful, meaning I was
Hmm.
like, "Nope, I got this. We're good." She's like,
Mm.
"Are you sure we're good? Because it sure seems like we're sinking." I'm like, "Nope, I've got it." Another lie.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Well, Joe, I'm glad you pulled out of it. I'm glad you're here now. And where all of that was leading is that the first caller that we are.
You were just exposing me to all of our listeners.
Well, I think a lot of people can relate
Welcome
And
to Paula's therapy session. My name is Paula.
the first caller that we are going to introduce is someone who also was in a financial jam for a long time and did not want to ask for help. Welcome to the Afford Anything podcast, the show that understands you can afford anything, but not everything. Every choice you make is a trade-off against something else, and that applies not just to your money, but your time, your focus, to any limited resource you need to manage. And that opens up two questions. What matters most? And how do you make decisions accordingly? Answering those takes a lifetime to figure out, and that's what we're here for. So I'm Paula Pant. You, Joe, are the financial planner. Joe Saul-Sehy. I should let you introduce yourself. Who are you?
I think you already did a nice job. I think that was good.
Right. We'll run with that.
16 years I was a financial planner. Now what? Financial media for another 14 after that.
And our first caller today, this is her second time calling into the show, is named Amy.
And Joe, this is Amy from a few months ago. I'm the freelance writer and actor who was in big trouble financially and didn't know how to get out of it. Between the time I wrote to you and you answered my question, I hit rock bottom. I had to borrow money from my mom to pay my credit card minimums. Anyway, I finally asked for help, and it came in the form of a friend's son who's a financial planner. He took me on pro bono, looked at everything, and formulated a plan for consolidating all my debt while keeping my savings and investments intact. This solved my immediate problem, but not how to stay out of trouble. That's exactly when you and Joe answered my question on the air, and you saved me.
Oh.
I immediately switched to a cash-only plan with a weekly paycheck. I had to keep a credit card for some monthly subscriptions for my work, but now I pay them on the day they're charged. If I buy something online, I pay it immediately out of my weekly money. One time I bought a gift online for someone, and only after charging it realized I had to pay for it out of that week's money. It was a tight week, but totally worth it. The two key takeaways I got from your answers were to look at the fastest and easiest and most lucrative ways to raise my income and to lose the credit cards. When I was listening to you say that you won't use them if you don't have them, I thought, that doesn't apply to me because before all this, I always paid off my credit cards. But then I realized that you were 100% right. If I hadn't had a credit card, I would have gone out and gotten a job when I got into trouble. Any job, maybe 2 jobs. But instead, I used the credit cards. Since going on the cash plan, there have been some weeks where I had to be creative, like have a yard sale, which got rid of a lot of crap I didn't want and paid for 1.5 weeks. I would love it if you would address, either you or with a special guest, the idea of asking for help before you get to where I was. I believe what you say and how you say is important, so I never say I got myself into a financial mess. I say I got myself into a financial SOS. And I know that many of your listeners think that it's a great idea to ask pros to help them invest, but I bet you have more listeners than me who are frozen. Mm-hmm. I had wanted to call you for more than 2 years before I did. I think it could help your listeners a lot to hear that it's okay to ask for help and how to get it. So thank you so much for everything. You guys rock. You saved me. I feel so much better and free. The other day I had to buy something expensive and I had cash to pay for it, and I didn't have to debate whether I wanted it or not. It was like, I have this much cash from my weekly thing and I can afford this thing. And it felt so good. So thank you. And congratulations, Paula, on graduating. Yay.
That's so awesome.
Oh, big congratulations to you for doing the work, for facing your finances, for everything that you have accomplished. Steve, this deserves not just any round of applause. Do we have like some really epic, I mean, we're talking trombones, parades, 10-piece marching band. All right, so let's talk some more about asking for help when you don't know the difference between paper and food.
And actually, but even before that, I'd like to, if you don't mind, Paula, go over some of the things that she glossed over for people that didn't hear that original episode. Because I think that the two things that really helped her that she didn't truly mention, because I think there's bedrock stuff behind her takeaways. And the one is the psychology of realizing that if you have a credit card balance available, your brain is very lazy and it will not come up with a creative solution. This is what she was talking about. This is what she's referring to. When we said to get away from the credit card and to go to all cash, She's like, well, before I got in trouble, I didn't use the credit card. Here's the deal, though. When you are in trouble, and this is what Amy so well pointed out, but I'd love to round out for everyone, is that if you have the credit card available and you do get into trouble, it's where your brain turns. But if the credit card is not there, your brain is so wonderful. We're all way smarter than we think we are. We can do this, like Amy has proven to herself. You can do this, and you can do it without the credit card. And so by taking that option away from her brain, she had a garage sale. Fantastic. And then the second thing was living a weekly budget, which she kept talking about, but she didn't say it was one of the big takeaways. But I think for a lot of people, this is a huge takeaway. Amy has income that is up and down and up and down and up and down. So what's the true problem? Amy has a boom bust budget. When she has the boom time, because those are not every week, she then goes out and spends extra money. I'm not talking about Amy, but this is the Amy's of the world, people on up, down income. They will spend more because you have this scarcity mindset. So when money finally comes around, you're like, oh, I got to buy a bunch of stuff now because I might not have anything next week. And then the next week when there is nothing, then you go into ramen noodle land. And again, credit card debt develops if you don't. But so by making your budget even all the time, and you've got X number, which is the amount you can spend that week, which is what Amy talked about. She's been practicing. This is what Amy did. She divorced her income stream from her budget. Don't get me wrong. Her budget is going to be less money than what she's bringing in. But those two numbers in our head, right? I get a raise, I spend more money. Why do we associate these two things? They don't need to be associated. Set your budget like Amy did every week. Money coming in can go up, down, up, down, up, down. And by the way, if you really need help doing this, make it two separate accounts. Have money go into account number one, which you never touch except for an automatic weekly or biweekly automatic move, like a paycheck, into that budget account. And if you don't want to do heavy duty accounting, just spend everything that's in that one account, forget the other account exists. And that's a good way to automate that system. But those are kind of the bedrock principles that Amy's working from, I think, to get her out of the problem.
Yeah, an additional thing that Amy is doing that I think is extremely helpful is if there is something that you have to purchase on a credit card, like let's say it's an online purchase. Now, technically a debit card is also an option, although debit cards also have their own drawbacks, especially when it comes to fraud protection, etc. But so let's just say that there's something that you have to buy on a credit card, pay it off daily, right? Like there is no reason to carry a credit card balance for a month. Pay that thing off daily. You pay it off immediately. And by doing that, you are turning a credit card into de facto the same thing as cash, just with an intermediary step because of the nature of digital processing. Yeah. In fact, I'm seeing more and more now establishments, brick and mortar establishments that are cashless. I've been into a handful of those. I don't know if this is just a New York thing or if this is nationwide, but there are a handful of places that I've gone to where I have tried to pay cash and they're like, "I'm sorry, we don't take cash here." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I think this will become a bigger and bigger piece of personal financial management as we become an increasingly cashless society.
I'm seeing that at sporting events. I went to a baseball game on a recent trip to Minnesota and tried to give them cash. Like, yeah, we can't take cash here at this, place where I'm buying an $18 hot dog.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I've encountered this at multiple places. So yeah, I mean, in that case, you've got two options, either a debit card, which some people like that strategy. The problem with the debit card is that if there's any fraudulent activity, you have far less protection. So if you're going to be really on top of like constantly monitoring and making and calling out fraud immediately and staying, but it's like added workload for you. But that is one option. The other option is to use a debit card where you do have that built-in fraud protection. That's what I prefer to use, but pay it off instantly.
I had to graduate. Mm-hmm. So when I ran out of gas, the first thing I had to do was get rid of all my credit cards completely. Well, they were worthless anyway at that point, but I still had to get to a cash only lifestyle. And so I literally just filled my wallet with cash, and did the envelope system. From there, I went to the debit card because cash was, even then in the 90s, early 90s, was already kind of a pain in the ass to just have a bunch of cash. And as I set up budgeting systems, the cash wasn't accountable, and I would spend cash in stupid ways. But with my debit card, because Cheryl and I had a system set up where we had a weekly money meeting, like 20 minutes long, that was truly the key thing for us. Going to a debit card made sure that I always had the money. So I wasn't going to get myself into credit card trouble because I couldn't trust my brain to not spend somebody else's money that I didn't have. So it was, for me, the debit card was the second tier. But as soon as I got through and had respect for the value of a dollar and how hard it is to get a dollar and to value the purchases that I make with that money, then I went to the credit card. So I think you got to see where you're at in that continuum to decide which one's best for you.
Right. Let's talk about what, Amy's, what she asked us to speak about, which is asking for help before you hit rock bottom. Seeing that you're slipping and asking for help while you are, before things have gotten urgent.
What'd you think?
I think the biggest challenge is that when things start to get bad, it is natural to go into a space of avoidance. And so I mentioned earlier the ostrich philosophy of just bury your head in the sand. But more broadly speaking, any form of avoidance, avoidance, now I'm not even talking about money, just avoidance emotionally can come in the form of deflection. If you know somebody who, anytime you talk about something, you try to talk about something serious, they always tell jokes, or they always change the subject, or maybe they become angry, right? They don't want to talk about that thing that is painful. And so they'll use anger or humor or change in topic as a deflection method. You encounter that a lot. Not just about money, about anything that is emotionally difficult or emotionally painful to discuss. And money is at its core one of the most emotional things that we deal with, even though most of us don't think of it that way. Most people think that money is purely tactical. It's actually highly emotional, because it's a symbolic representation of our time, our energy, our life, and the time and lives of people around us. Anyway, all of that is to say, avoidance is common when dealing with any emotionally charged subject, and money is highly emotionally charged. Other forms of avoidance: busyness, workaholism, burying yourself in your work. I've got some friends who are highly avoidant in that, and that is how they express it. Like, work for them is the equivalent of going to a bar or going to a casino, right? It's healthier than going to a bar, but they bury themselves in their work to the detriment of their heart and mind.
And sometimes family and friends and other relationships.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the core question really is, how do you, if you know that you have an avoidant tendency, how do you pull yourself out of that? And I mean, in some ways, that is the question that humanity has been grappling with since the dawn of time, right? The first step, of course, is just noticing in yourself that you are avoidant. Noticing those times when, are you putting in an extra few hours at work because you want to, because you're excited about the project that you're working on, or are you doing it because you are deeply avoidant about something else? Sometimes it might be a combination of both. Sometimes both of those statements can be true. You might be extremely excited about a work-related project and also deeply avoiding something more painful. Same thing. Why are you suddenly cracking a bunch of jokes? Is it because you love those jokes and you love making people laugh? Or is it because someone brought up something painful and you want to deflect the conversation?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably both. It's probably true that you do enjoy being the jokester of your friend group, and you do enjoy making a room full of people laugh. But also, I think that just recognizing when both are true.
Best comedians are dealing with some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What doesn't kill you makes you funnier.
You know, there are two things, Paula, along these lines that I was thinking about. I really like, and I'd encourage people to go back and listen to your interview with Peter Atwater, because I think that if we shift the game on ourselves to think about, you know, he talked to you about the opposite of confidence is vulnerability, right? And often we will think too much about where are we vulnerable, but in these areas, especially financially, we don't think enough about where are we vulnerable. And I think that having a thought of where am I vulnerable and pushing your psyche into a spot where you are, he goes through the quadrants. And again, people, we're going to want to go back to your interview with him, pushing yourself into a spot where you know that you may be vulnerable so that you do take a look. I'll give you an example. Everybody knows you and Susie Orman are BFFs. Everybody already knows that. So Susie has said a few things that are really, really good. Susie said this, and I've stolen this from Susie for a long time, and I want to give credit where credit's due. Susie said, you know, you think you can't save any money now because you're struggling with your budget at age 35. Imagine yourself as 65 and you still haven't saved any money. How do you feel then? So look at what she did using Peter Atwater's principles. She took somebody who's like, yeah, I don't have to save now. I got too many things going on. I don't need to save. Project yourself into a spot where you're going to be vulnerable 30 years from now. And all of a sudden you go, oh, hell, if I don't start this now, I am screwed. And you will take somebody who's bubbling along, feeling like I'm okay, I can do that later, to all of a sudden, I got to move today. Because if I don't save today, I'm a mess. So I think by asking ourselves, number one, what's important to me? Number two, then, is that where I'm truly spending my time and energy and tracking those things? And then forcing ourselves into an am I vulnerable here situation where you're not on the dirt road walking the mile to get the gas can people don't want to. You're projecting that ahead of time. And I'll give you an example from what Amy's talking about. Amy said, you know, I had this big expense, but I had the money available. And part of that, I think, is Amy said to herself, what if a big expense comes up again? What am I going to do? She forces herself into that vulnerable quadrant, and she came up with a system to help her avoid that. I think that is how you get there.
You know, since we're talking about it, I want to outline what these quadrants are. Because actually, in my interview with Peter, we never actually discussed the quadrants. We talked about confidence. We didn't actually talk about the quadrants. Although I did introduce the quadrants in the intro to that episode. Anyway, for people who want to listen to that episode, it's episode 452 of affordanything.com/episode 452. But right now, since we're discussing it, let's go over what these quadrants are. So,
yeah, because you certainly talk around them the entire time.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine a horizontal line, right? That's the x-axis. And that line represents certainty. So as you're close to the point zero, as you're close to the start of the line, you have very low certainty. Let's say a lottery ticket, right? You have very, very low certainty about what next week's winning lottery numbers are. And then as you move further down that line, you get towards high certainty, right? So it's just a horizontal line, low certainty to high certainty. At high certainty is the sun will rise in the east and set in the west, right? That's the highest certainty thing that we've got.
Well, we could even stick with your lottery analogy. The return on $1 in the lottery, incredibly uncertain. The return on a savings account where the bank says, Paula, you will get 0.06% on this, 100% certain, you know.
Right. So that's the x-axis. That's the horizontal line. Now, meanwhile, you've also got a y-axis, right? You've got that vertical line. And the y-axis represents control. So at that zero, at that low point, you have low control. Again, the lottery ticket. You can't control you have zero control over how they're going to pull those numbers next week. At the top of the line, they're the things over which you have a very high degree of control, like how much money you choose to spend on nail polish or Xboxes, right? Do people still buy Xboxes? Is that the thing?
I don't know. I
don't
did.
know.
It's really fun.
Okay, cool. Right, you have a huge degree of control over that. And so then if you imagine breaking that into quadrants, there's the quadrant in which you have low certainty and low control, and that's where you are the most vulnerable. And Joe, that's what you are talking about. You know, what are the scenarios in which you're going to be most vulnerable?
Yeah.
Low certainty, low control.
Ask yourself that question, and to do it in that Susie way where you project yourself in the future where you're experiencing this, and you ask yourself, is that a problem for me? Previously for Amy it was, now for Amy it's not.
Right.
Even though it hadn't happened yet. She set it up so that when the situation came, which it ultimately did, she didn't have to experience that lower left quadrant.
Right. You know, on the topic of Susie Orman, I recently heard, and I have not independently fact checked this, so I don't know if it's true, but I recently heard that despite all of her wealth, you know, she's worth, I'm sure, tens of millions of dollars. I'm sure she's worth some
big
you
number.
know, very, very big number. I heard she only has one pair of earrings, and it is, you know, she can easily buy an earring company if she wants to.
Yeah.
But I've heard that she maintains that practice just as a reminder, no matter how much money she has, there's no reason to splurge on things that are not important to her, right? Spend where your priorities are. Don't spend on things that aren't priorities.
And that, by the way, true story, is why I don't have any earrings.
Joe, now I know what to get you for Christmas.
It's not important to me, Paula. I thought I've already proved. I just said it's not important to me.
I'll make you a deal. If you get your ears pierced, I'll get another piercing with you.
Well, luckily we're safe. We're both safe.
Safe?
Yeah. You don't get the other piercing. You don't need another piercing, and I don't either. So there you go. Anyway, I get the point, and I didn't mean to demean the point by piling on. But yeah, these reminders that you set up for yourself, I think are important. And help you look at it, and also gets rid of some of the consternation. Because if you make it worse for yourself to not look at it than it is to look at it, you're prepping yourself to win. You're like, oh, I got to look at this, because if I don't look at it, then I'm really screwed. You know what I mean? You got to build that leverage into your brain to make you address it ahead of time.
Yeah. You know, I think we've answered Amy's question, yes?
I think so too, yeah.
Okay, then before I move on, one more random, completely tangential story. So you know, my dad, of all people, my dad actually has two piercings in his ear. He didn't choose to have it. His mom, my grandma, pierced his ear when he was like a baby. And it's because in certain parts of Nepali Hindu society, if you ask God for something and you like kind of make a deal with God, like, God, if you do this, I promise to always do that, you know, then piercing your child's ear is like how you sign on the dotted line.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'm not going to sign on the dotted line with me. I'm going to take my baby and sign on the dotted line with him. Your dad's like, what did I do?
Yeah.
It's like a bystander in this whole deal.
A bystander with pierced ears. Yeah. So, yeah, but he always said that he believes that those piercings ended up bringing them a lot of blessings.
That's fabulous.
So thank you, Amy, for calling back for the update on where you are for this whole, you know, for updating us, for sharing your win with the community, and congratulations to you on everything that you have done on this financial turnaround. Very, very proud of you. Very happy for you. And I hope that other people find inspiration in what you've shared.